Today I'm here at the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona, and we're going to put on a production of The Man Who Killed Santa Claus. The Man Who Killed Santa Claus is a true story that happened right here in Mesa, and it's about Santa Claus jumping from an airplane into downtown Mesa during the Depression. And while it sounds morbid, it's actually a comedy, and it's quite fun.
He went up in a plane about 3,000 feet. His parachute failed and now Santa's dead meat. Hey, Santa Claus is falling to town.
Today I'm going to discuss the top 5 mistakes to avoid when shooting a live event. And at the end, I'm going to tell you a couple of tips on post-production that will make your live events look even better. I'm not filming today's events. That's being done by Mesa's Channel 11, but I have filmed a number of live events, and so I know some of the pitfalls.
And I'm going to turn the time over to the producer of this show tonight, Mark Arnett, to do some auditioning.
This is going on television, you know. It's being recorded for Channel 11.
I bet it has a lot of viewers.
Hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah.
Hundreds of viewers. It's going to be great. You're going to love it.
The biggest mistake that you can make is to overexpose your image. And that's very easy in this situation because we have a high contrast scene. We have a ton of light on me, and it's harsh light, and it's from far away. And then we have practically no light back here in the background. And that light needs to be black, but your camera, if you put it in auto mode, is going to try to make it look gray. And when it does that, it's going to raise the exposure up to try to get that middle ground, and it's going to clip highlights on your forehead and different places. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that you get the brightest scene that's going to happen at the event and set for the face and make sure you're not clipping. One way to do that is if your camera has zebras or zebras if you're from the UK, turn those on, put them at 100% and make sure that they do not show any of those zebra lines. In that case, you won't be clipping and you can recover whatever you need to in the highlights. Just remember that in a scene like this, it's never going to look like a movie. It's going to look like a stage play because it's lit for a stage play.
I'll sing it the whole day long. Ring-a-ling-a-ling, ding-dong.
She's back. I'll sing it the whole day long. Our Christmas song.
The next tip is when you're using a multicam shoot that you have at least one camera that's set up on a tripod that will capture the entire scene. That way, if the other cameras are moving around, you can always cut to the one camera that has everything. So the next tip is you have to make sure that you get good audio for your live event. And in order to do that, if you just put a crappy mic on top of a camera or even a very expensive mic on top of your camera, you're going to get the entire room and there's going to be a lot of reverb and that audio is going to be pretty bad. Am I right, Aaron?
Correct.
Yeah, so what you want to do is get the audio guy to give you a feed from his board and plug it into some sort of external recorder. And you probably do this before, haven't you?
Yeah,
this happens?
Left, right to you.
Yeah, okay. So not hard to do. You just got to bring a little recorder and make sure that you get that sound because that sound is going to make a big, big difference in your live recording.
Absolutely.
Fourth, don't forget to mic the audience. Now, the sound engineer is not going to automatically mic the audience because, well, that's not usually done in theater, but you're going to want the audience's reaction for your video. And so you're going to need to set up a separate mic like this one here and make sure that you get that recorded to some external device so that you can mix that in with your show. Otherwise, it's going to seem like no one liked your show because the applause will be timid and the laughs will be very small. You're going to want that audience reaction. Trust me.
Just my little Christmas time.
Oh yeah! Get it! That's why.
Thank you.
Fifth, make sure you get some establishing shots of the venue that you're in. Now, you might not end up using them, but as my friend once told me, hey, it's when you're on the moon that you want to pick up the rocks. So this is the time to pick up some establishing shots of the venue because it's going to be very difficult to go back if you later want them. And now for that post-production tip that I promised you. Here is a scene from the show.
What you're about to hear is based on a true story that happened right here in Mesa.
Okay, so here is my scene, and it's got two problems that I'd like to fix. One, it's very, very harsh and very, very contrasted. The first thing I want to do is see if I can get the background to be completely black. If I were to just add some color wheels here and pull the blacks down, I can get those blacks to be black. But if I do it that way, then I take out the sweater as well, and it looks like he's got a kind of a floating head. So what I want to do is not use the color wheels there. Rather, I want to come in here and use the color curves. And then when I take the curves, it would do the same thing. In other words, if I crush the blacks down, we get that same thing. But we can protect the sweater by just simply coming in here, and the eyedropper will place a point there that will protect that. So if we pull in now the blacks and crush the blacks down in, you can see that we've crushed the blacks in this area, but we've kept some of the detail here in the sweater. Now you can see that we are starting to have that break up here. So we might want to pull that back just a little bit and try to get something that kind of brings in a little balance there. We also might want to move this down in here so that we're just not crushing in the very blacks of blacks, but we're only crushing in those things that sort of hit a threshold. And this is something you're going to have to play with and go back and forth until you get something that really works for you. Might want to pull that down in there just a little bit like that. Now, I also want to get rid of the highlights, but if I take the highlights and just pull them down here, well, it's going to pull down the rest of our image, and it's not going to be very pretty. I find that for highlights, the best thing to do is go back to the color wheels, and the color wheels just pull the highlights down a bit like that, and I keep an eye on Parade to make sure that the highlights are getting down below at least 100. Now, if I want to try, I can take the midtones and bump them up a tad if that's important to me, or I can pull them back down to the shadows as well. Remember, I'm dealing with a high contrast image, and if I try to make that into a not contrast image, I'm going to fail because it's a contrasted image. What I want to do is get the blacks black, and I want to get the highlights rolled off or tamed down, and that's my ultimate goal. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule that needs to be followed in every instance. It's just something for you to think about and try. I find as a filmmaker that if I've seen what other people have done, that gives me some options and some things to try. It doesn't mean that I have to do it that way, but you try this, you try that, and then you come up with something that works for you or does the best with what you have. Well, I hope you've learned something from what I've shown you here today. If you have some tips for me, that would be great. Please leave them in the comments. If you'd like to see a video about key lights and lighting for video, I've done a couple videos on that, specifically how to choose the best key light. And you can click on that right there if you would.